So welcome everyone to another episode of Eco Yogis. Today we have Carolin Fraude with us, and my name is Wesley. And Carolin studied educational science, sociology, psychology, and philosophy, and works for a research institute in Germany. And she designs and researches reflective dialogue formats for various stakeholders at the UN climate change conferences. So Carolin is also a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation as part of the Brahma Kumaris organization. She's had a long background of practicing Raj Yoga and integrating her skills into her research and her work on educational science and climate change. So Carolin's special interest lies in the interconnectedness of inner and outer transformation. So really looking at how transforming and cultivating states of consciousness and behaviors can help transitioning towards a sustainable society. Again, welcome, Carolin, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Wesley. It's really beautiful to connect to you in Australia and to hear what your interests are. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining us all the way on the other side of the world at quite probably an early part of the morning for yourself. So thank you. So Carolin, to start things off for today, can you tell us a little bit about how you first came across the Brahma Kumaris, and what was it that made you want to take up its study and the practice of Raj Yoga meditation?
Okay, yeah. Actually, I in my teenage time, I was quite aware of many things which go wrong in the world, like inequalities and hunger and so on. And one big issue was the environment. And all my friends were also aware of these things, and we would go for demonstrations or organize events to raise more awareness. And during one of a big demonstration, which was not specifically about environment, but a theme which is quite connected to it, was against atomic energy. I actually had my first spiritual experience, you can say, totally out of the blue. We were like trying to stop a train with atomic waste, and there were policemen from all over the country, and it was quite violent, and I haven't seen a scene like that before. And so there was a policeman, quite young, who was beating an old farmer who was already lying on the floor, and that kind of really triggered my sense for justice. And I said, "You can't do this," and just touched him on his shoulder. And because he was totally under tension, he turned around with his hard plastic glow and wanted to beat me. And just in the last moment, I pulled back and he didn't hit me. And this was like a shock for me and pulled me out into a different state of consciousness, you can say. And I was calling out for justice in that moment, totally shocked. And and that was when I had a real deep experience of, actually, you can say, a different kind of love and power, which I hadn't encountered before that. And the whole scene changed totally for me, and also this policeman. And finally, that was showing me, and I was thinking about this for a long time afterwards, what this was. But it made me aware that violence is not going to change the world or opposition in that sense, but there is a totally different dimension which we can access and connect to, which has a huge amount of transformative capacity, especially in relation or encounters with people. And then I started to search for spirituality. I got interested, and I then traveled to India, and by chance I found the Brahma Kumaris there. So that was my where I came from. Well, the other part of the question, what made me then finally decide to go on a spiritual path, or live a life which is, we would say, a yogi life. For me, it was very, very important to see that it's not just theory of philosophy. I studied philosophy, I liked it, but it wasn't enough. Therefore, I was politically active. But here I could see an integrated approach. I could see how people actually live in a community in India, in that ashram. And actually then I got to know more about other countries, and live a very conscious life with meditation, with awareness, and at the same time doing very normal worldly things of cooking and cleaning and or working in a hospital and so on. And I found that very attractive, that very natural, down to earth spirituality. And also from the beginning, when I started to learn meditation, I had beautiful experiences, and I could see how it actually changes me and enhances my inner well-being.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I can definitely relate to some of that, and can definitely see how the the appeal of Raja Yoga meditation would have been there, and sort of how it would link into, I guess, where you are today, and the role that you play today, both within the Brahma Kumaris organization, but also within the field of the environment and climate change. So maybe just leading into the next question. So in your current work, as I understand it, you research mindsets and transformational tools. So in your view, why are mindsets and why are they so important, and why is it so important to change them? And what are transformational tools?
Yeah, so I give it some context, because in the environment arena, I would say, people who are working for environment, and it's a long history in Germany. It's not just recently, but in Germany, since many, many years, people are aware of this and try to change things. And there's a huge amount of knowledge. And at the same time, things haven't been changing much at all, actually. And so people, scientists and politicians start to ask, why are we not able to change our society? Why are people, individuals, not able to really change their lifestyles, or not enough people? And so there was a growing understanding that beside technological understanding, knowledge, and political frameworks, and different forms of scientific research is not enough. There is a different dimension which is crucial for people to change. And so mindsets is like the term which is used to describe one definition I like, is like the inner lens through which we see the world and ourselves. In a more spiritual term, you could say, you would talk more about consciousness. But whatever you use, it's like an inner perspective, an inner worldview, an awareness, how you see things and how you make sense of things. And this seems to be quite a key for how we make decisions, how we act, and so on. So in my professional work, my colleague started this project a couple of years ago about mindsets in the era where we have a huge amount of climate disaster now. And so, yeah, mindsets is actually something which hasn't been looked at in this context of sustainability and environment. In other contexts like spirituality or religion, yes, that's very conscious that values and consciousness are important factors for change, but not in the political or scientific world or in the environmental work. So that came only after a few years ago, that this term was actually introduced.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like, yeah, it's really this this missing link between spirituality and mindsets and those inner values, and connecting that to, I guess, all the external things, all the external actions we take to try and address sustainability and climate change and all these environmental issues. The project that you were just referring to, was that the project called A Mindset for the Anthropocene? Could you tell us okay? Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and what is the Anthropocene?
Yes, so the Anthropocene is actually a geological term, and it is a suggestion by a scientist called Paul Crutzen, who actually died in January this year, who said that we need to give this era, this geological era, we are in a different term, because the actual one is the Holocene is not describing this era in the right way now. And it's just a term which, anthro, the human, is actually a very powerful factor of influence on the geological system, on the environment. And one picture which is usually used to kind of visualize the Anthropocene is a satellite picture on the Earth, where you, in night, where everything is dark, but you see how much light, artificial light, electricity is being seen. So actually it's dark, it's night, but the whole planet is full of light. So each corner, wherever you look at, each country or yeah, actually the part of the world is lightened. And so it shows very impressively how much we humans have influenced the planet, and have been able to even, you know, bring it out of balance. So to give that a clear statement, he suggested that term, which now has been used quite frequently to actually, yeah, point out this or acknowledge, you can say, that it's not anymore that, you know, the environment is very strong and uninterruptible. It's been very influenced by our actions and systems we build.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, yeah, creating that language for it and that concept for it is, it's kind of really, it seems like a small thing, but it really is a critical thing, isn't it, in terms of getting it onto people's radars and getting people to start thinking about it in a different way, in a different mindset.
Right. Yeah, you're totally right. Because it points out where the change has to come from. It's from us. It's not that you know, climate change happens out of the blue. It's a normal process of the environment. No, it's we humans have glass to turn this development around. True. And a mindset for the Anthropocene just means that in this era, we have to look for different consciousness, for a different state of mind, which you know, becomes part of the solution. And it starts with how we see the world, how we see the environment. And that has changed a lot through industrialization, where our understanding of the earth has become very mechanical and production orientated, whilst originally we were much more in touch with the environment. We were living in integrated in the rhythms of nature as well. Like my grandmother, she knew a lot about planting and growing. When is the right season for what? And it's like the wisdom of nature. And nowadays, you can say, especially in big cities, this knowledge is totally lost, and people expect everything to be there anytime, any fruit, any vegetable, and artificial growing and ripening processes of fruits is kind of normal. And so it's like the world we have created even supports this development of having lost touch with nature, with the environment, and also therefore what the environment in a way needs, like the natural boundaries for it to be able to be healthy or be functional in the right way, and yeah, healthy. And we haven't respected that, less and less and less, and therefore destroyed a lot and brought this beautiful environment, this system of nature out of balance.
Would you say that, yeah, our mindsets are out of balance, and therefore over time we've brought the external world out of balance as a result? Is that really the analogy there, or the parallel that's happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question that our mindsets have gone out of balance in a way. Yeah, definitely. From a Raj Yoga perspective, it's like we have lost ourselves, even not only touch with nature, but we have actually lost touch with our true self, and started here as well to externalize our identity. Like we started to think more and more of the physical body as our identity, or about the things we own, or the skills we have, or our career, and so on. And that had a huge effect, this disconnection from ourselves, because you can say that any external identity is just a replacement, is just a temporary replacement for what is really missing, which is being in touch with my inner beauty, my inner resources, my inner identity. And this is where security, peace, happiness lies, which we now compensate all the time externally, just because we don't know how to access this anymore. And so, yeah, our consciousness, our awareness gone out of balance, you can say. We started,
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a bit strange that we start to identify just with matter, or with clothes, or with a car, whilst we are such different, being.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting, the whole connection between our consciousness, or our mindset, and our relationship with the world, but also just the way that we influence the world around us. I want to just come back to another question. I think you've already touched on it, but I'll just ask it anyways. In your view, why is it important for people to know about climate change, and even the sustainable development goals, and the commitment that countries make to that? How does knowing about those things, and those commitments to those goals, how does that lead us to making practical choices and actions?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite important for everyone to really understand climate change is happening. And it's amazing that still there are many people who don't realize that it is happening, despite of all the scientific proof we have now. And also to understand that we have to change. We have to change our lifestyles. We have to change our the way we, live as a society, our value systems. And well, because change is not so easy, and anyone who tried to change themselves knows that it isn't that easy. You need a lot of determination, and often it's been political laws, political decisions and laws who kind of push people to change. And this sustainable development goals are not laws in that way, but they are internationally set targets which any country has to contribute. And so from the level of a nation, from the political side, it has to reach the society, and has to reach laws and rearrangement of transport systems and food systems and all of these things, so that there are more alternatives, more healthy ways of organizing societies and all what we need. And also, yeah, restrictions, because the time in which we need to change and the fundamental way we have to change is quite huge now, because we have waited so long doing nothing, actually, hardly any change. So now the time is running out and we have to move quite quickly to change things. So yeah, sustainable development goals, to know about them, to understand them, need to are ahead for people to, you know, see it's not only my country, not the politicians only in my country, but it's actually commitment countries have given amongst themselves to, yeah, to save our earth.
Mm. And to take personal responsibility, I guess, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, right. When we understand that everyone in all countries have to change, then it's probably easier if you think only I have to change. Yes.
Great. Another question. So, where do you think your interests, so your personal interest in the environment, has come from? And what do you dream of achieving in relation to the environment?
So I said that in my teenage life years, I already had a strong connection to the environment. However, when I then started to understand more about inner transformation, meditation, spirituality, I focused on that for only for a long time, because I found there is where I need to start. I changed my diet, I changed my whole consumerism. Um, I was aware of plastic even before, not using so much plastic. As I said, there was in my friends, all my friends were quite aware, and many of them were already at that time vegan. You can imagine it's now becoming more global awareness that vegan diet is better, but it was in my life already more than 20 years ago. And company is a very important factor for change as well. You know, if you are around people who are quite aware, reflected, who do change their lives and do different things, have different values, that's much more easier to also follow a certain lifestyle and certain values. Yeah, rather than you're with totally different people. So that's a huge support. But then after some time, for me, I found it's when I reconnected to the environment movement and specifically to the climate change movement and the climate change conferences, I saw really how many so good people kind of devote their whole life trying to fight against economy and you know very transgressive systems in the world, and you know had so good intentions for that. And one thing is really that I appreciate these people. They are quite informed, quite aware, and they are ready to give a huge amount of their time for doing something about it, whilst you know the masses often is quite inactive and don't care. So I really care for people in this movement. But also, I understand from a spiritual perspective that change, personal change as well as outer change, cannot only happen by changing my consciousness on an only mental level. Consciousness needs to be enacted in life, in actions, in relationships with people, with my relationship with anything actually around me. And that also actually inspired me to go on a path on a spiritual path, the whole idea of being a yogi whilst living in this world. And the yogi for me actually means a person who is conscious, who lives a certain very high or qualitative consciousness whilst being in a world which is totally different. And that really inspired me that this is possible, that it's also an expression of a huge amount of independence, self-led person. You know, I understand my own things and I make my own decisions, and no matter what the world around me is about or telling me, you know, advertisements tell me what I need, might need, and so on, and brainwash people with all their goods, but and messages of buy me. But to be so self-led, so aware that any moment we can not be influenced by it, but make our decisions from a very clear point of understanding, and not only rational but also, you know, the experience is part of yogi for me, is to be in that experience of connectedness with the bigger, you know, with life, with every being on this earth. So that's beautiful for me, and actually gave me a totally different vision of myself and life, but also different experience, much more aliveness, you can say. So now back to your actual question, of why I engaged in the environment. So the people I wanted to reach out to and bridge these two different worlds of spirituality and environment, but also knowing that we need to put new systems into practice, and that starts from my own behavior. It's kind of enacted consciousness, it's enacted structures, it's patterns which I bring into the material world, yeah, in this life. And if it's only in my mind, it's not that transformative. You can, for example, you can say I'm a very peaceful person and sit somewhere in the jungle, and yeah, you can meditate there. But for me, if you're a peaceful person, you have to prove it in an environment which is violent. And if you still are able to hold your peace, then you have been given the proof for me to of real transformation. And you have also been able to transform other people and the people, you know, the environment around you, from a violent one to a peaceful one. So in that sense, it's very practical. We need to change our relationship with food, with anything, very, very practical.
I wanted to add before as well, when you were talking about, spirituality being, I guess, yeah, walking the walk. And then you were talking about things about, it's the way the relationship you have with people and the world around you, the connection, the care. But also, do you also think it's also about exerting or having a positive influence on the world around you? So not just the harmony and the relationship, but also to actually positively influence, whether it's the people or even the material world around you. Do you think that's also kind of an important part of it?
Yes. You know, there in science, there are systems theories, which some of them are coming from quantum physics, and they show that we are all connected. And even if one element in a system changes direction, changes its course, the whole system is affected. And I feel this gives me a lot of hope, that even if a certain amount of people make serious change, that it affects the whole system. It doesn't need everyone. It needs a critical mass for like the functioning of the system turning around, and the rest will just follow. There are so many people who just anyway do what everyone else is doing, and so they will kind of be driven to a different course. But it needs these pioneers, these courageous people who have the courage to change themselves and their lives and their environment, and be kind of, you can say, people who give hope, who give orientation, and who are genuine in what they say, they walk their talk. And yeah, it is important. And you can actually measure your own inner change how genuine you are by the change you are able to create in your environment, in your the people you're with. If they're really inspired, then it tells something about your level of commitment or your level of understanding and practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely resonates with me, being a fellow spiritual and meditation practitioner. And yeah, I totally agree. There's really, there's one thing is to look at spirituality and meditation as a philosophy, but it's something entirely different to then actually try and apply it and walk the walk and lift the quality of the relationships with the people and the world around you. So yeah, no, definitely resonates. I guess maybe that's a good segue into my next question, which was so looking at yourself and your specific role or your interest within the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative. What do you do? What's your way of applying your spiritual practice and the work you do through that part of the organization?
Mm-hmm. Well, I really have to come back to what I said earlier. I love people in general, and I see not only the environment is in a bad stage, but also people are unhappy, are afraid, insecure. So it's actually about us to change. And so my work is actually to connect to people in a way that is of a certain quality, I would say. Especially in the political world or in the scientific world, it's so much about external performance, how much papers you publish or how much I don't know, you show up in the political world. But we are human beings, and we are all valuable per se. And the real beauty for me is when we can open each other to each other and show who we really are. And that's so beautiful. And so in a way you can say, I create safe places for dialogue, for people to have meaningful conversations where where they can kind of let go of their roles, their agendas, whatever they have to, vote for or argue for, and just be themselves. And in that kind of quality of conversation and encounter, this deeper level can be touched. And the deeper level, I mean, like, our fears or our real wishes or values.
Okay. So, Carolyn, what has your experience been in attending the large UN conferences for climate change? What is it that you've been doing at those conferences in the last few years, and what's the general feel and the response from the participants that you've worked with in that conference?
So the UN climate change conferences, which go on since 25 years, or actually longer, but there have been 25 of them, are the biggest UN conferences. So you have really people from all over the world. It's an amazing experience of like the world family, you can say, being present there. And at the same time, I think it's also known that the negotiations are not very successful since a long time. Yes, the highlight in Paris 2015, I think, the Paris Agreement was indeed a highlight where 120, 30 countries agreed upon an international agreement and acknowledged that we have to work together. However, since then, again, negotiations, implementation, national implementation didn't really succeed. We are far behind these goals and these agreements. And so there is a question mark, why? Why are negotiations getting stuck so extremely? And, I cannot say how many million these conferences cost. and how many people are flying there. It's a huge amount of money, and yet it's not really much effective. So what I'm looking at is the lack of trust amongst nations, amongst negotiators, defending their stake and being very narrow, I would say, in their approach and in their view on trying to defend their what they have to contribute as least as possible, you can say, so that in their country they have to change as least as possible. And that's so awkward because climate change will hit us all, or earlier or later. It's just not reversible anymore. We can just try to reduce the effect as much as we can. And it's only possible if we work all together. So to have a perspective to only look at your country is totally absurd. And so being aware of this, we create spaces of dialogue where people can actually meet beyond their political agendas, their position and role they have, just as human beings, and then look at the issue. And with this shift in your consciousness again, you totally see the issue in a different way, and you come to different solutions, into different results. And also creativity is being released, you can say. If you think together, you understand we are all sitting in one boat, then you are totally, your mind is totally more open for solutions. So that's kind of what I see, what's happening there, what should happen more. And it's also what I do in my work, trying to create a different format of there, because usually it's very one-dimensional. I mean, there are the negotiations, which are quite negative, frustrating, and stuck. And then there are the events, which are kind of talks, but no interaction. And for transformation to happen, I feel really we need an encounter, and we need to have meaningful conversations. We need to have an experience which kind of brings us out of our unconscious routine and narrow mind. And that's actually because there is such a diversity there at the conference. It's a beautiful and huge opportunity to create that. However, the formats doesn't allow it. You can say, unless you try to create your own space within that environment. So besides building partnerships and friendships, interface work, for example, but also interlinkages between science and religions, also happening a lot there now, because one is not enough. We need to look at things from very different forms of knowledge and understanding to solve these complex issues. So yeah, this is some of the work we are doing.
And I guess I think maybe this is what you were touching on, but some of your recent research talks about the need for that mindset shift in a way that can support new ways of communication and collaboration, which is based on more relational modes of knowing, being, and acting. Is this sort of what you were just touching on, or can you maybe talk a little bit more about how that way of communication and collaboration would look, and what is the mindset shift that's missing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's actually directly related to what I say, and I'm happy to elaborate a bit further on that. So the relational knowing, being, doing points out that in that framework, we actually understand that transformation is a relational thing. It's something which happens when I relate to something. And in a relationship, you have two things, like you have yourself, and then the question of who am I is part of it. And then you have the other. It can be a human being, it can be nature, it can be an animal, it can be a thing, a table, or whatever. So you relate to something. And in that relating, you see a lot of, it's an expression of your consciousness again, on the way you see someone or something. We know it from relationships between human beings. You see someone relating to someone in a disrespectful way, or in a very unconscious, for example, there is a term beneficiaries. If a certain culture gets support from a country, so you see a nation or a culture as beneficiaries. For example, the indigenous cultures or small island communities. But in fact, this is such a disrespectful perspective, because they are not just beneficiaries, they have a huge amount of cultural wisdom and treasures to give, actually. So it's just an example how our view on someone makes the relationship. And so the expression of my consciousness in that relationship is the crucial factor to look at. So coming, moving away from nations and roles and positions and political agendas to the very simple human encounter does have a huge amount of transformative potential for working together, for being honest with one another, for doing the best we can together to make something change. And there is no other way, to my understanding. If we want to transform the world, we have to work together and do the best we can together. And another thing is connected with that, actually, talking about disconnection and a relationship which is abusive, where my own needs are so loud and strong, my desires, that they push me to in a certain behavior, like from a person, I just want this from you, and the rest of the human being, I don't care. I want this and this working hours from you, but that you're a human being, I don't care. And that's what these people actually working, for example, in the UN, but in any political context experience. They're like machines. The what is expected of them is amazing. It's beyond human possibility. Humaneness. So my personal needs and you can say my personal emptiness makes me blind or losing my sensitivity for the needs of the other. And now you can ask, why? What has that again to do with the environment? It's just the same thing. If we would be in touch with the environment, we would hear her suffering. We would see how it's out of balance and it's harmed. And it's the same as a human being. Like, how can people be so crucial to other human beings? It's only if there's some disconnection and they lost empathy, they lost sensitivity or perception of the other, and that's the moment when we become violent. And so the solution for me is actually really, or for the whole work I'm doing, is that connect back, become aware of your needs, and take responsibility for them in a healthy way. And then you also can connect to your inner resources then. And there is so much inside of us. We just didn't realize how to get there. And meditation is one beautiful way to get in touch and to experience the peace within ourselves and meaning and sense and so on. And then you can bring that out into your actions, in your relating to others, and in that sense, share this beauty which is inside of you and become a giver rather than in someone who expects and wants and so on, and abuses others or the environment. And that's, you can say, a very human act, but it's in these contexts where it's needed so much, maybe more than in other contexts, because it's such a hard environment.
You mentioned meditation just at the end there. Can I ask, how does your spiritual study and your lifestyle and your meditation practice with the Brahma Kumaris help you in your work? Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like for you personally?
Yes, it was, and now I'm remembering the last climate change conference in Madrid, and just being there is challenging. It's loud, gigantic halls, many people, then the technical noise. And if you don't have a practice of disconnecting your awareness from all these influences and going inside where your stillness is, where your peace lies, where your love is, and also connect to a higher source. If you don't have that practice, I see the comparison with colleagues. I've been there. I have my morning meditation, I have my evening meditation, and in between the day, I do connect as much as possible and go inside for just a minute. And that kind of keeps me on a certain energy level. Otherwise, I would be so exhausted, and many people are just exhausted. They fall asleep on their chairs because they are done. And so this is a wonderful practice as a yogi, is to always check, how much energy have I lost right now? So can I go back into balance? Can I recharge myself? And then secondly, to share that. That's also a way of accumulating your inner energy, to share kindness, to share, benevolence and all these things. And people are grateful. Some people who came in our space, which we had there, they just came in because it was so different. The atmosphere was so different than everything around there. They just needed to breathe and recharge a little bit, and then we got into a conversation and further. Yeah, so my meditation practice is on my own in silence, as well as out there when I'm during the day acting.
Wonderful. What do you feel the BKs can offer more of today in terms of helping to change mindsets and providing transformational tools?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because there is luckily, a growing awareness of that religions can have something to offer and our support for people. I think the real strength of the Raj Yoga philosophy and what Brahma Kumaris can offer is that we have quite concrete practices and teachings, which on the one hand explain things, complex things, in a very simple and practical way. And on the other hand, practices which are handy. Again, you don't need to study for I don't know how many years to practice meditation. It's quite simple. You just need to do it regularly to be able to do it anytime. And so, like, these things really, like the how-to question is, I think, the strength of the Brahma Kumaris and Raj Yoga, because it's so practical. And yeah, so, and that's what we need. We need to know now how to change my thoughts, how to change my relationship, how to change my habits. And the other thing, which maybe is still something which we need to find the right terminologies for, so people kind of open to it, is that on the one hand, there is a resource inside of us which we can tap into and access and use. And the other side, there is another energy source. And of course, religions talk about God and so on. But again, here you can, without having this religious context, which didn't attract me as well, but a very, logical and simple concept of there is an energy source, so like I am, just not a human being, but a being, which has endless power, endless peace, endless love, like an ocean. And this is beyond the material world, and I can travel to that source in my mind, and I can connect and really take energy into myself from that source, so that I can enhance my energy level. And not only that, I can use that energy for everything I do. Because one big problem also with activists is that they burn out. Like when you use, they work with a lot of, engagement and interest, but using up their own energy, which happens to many people in many professions, of course, also in the healthcare sector and so on. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous and can be very damaging for the soul, the being. And so to learn to take from that source, connect with that energy, it's a divine, beautiful light, which you fill yourself with, but also use it for whatever you do. And it's not only protecting you from burning out, but also because it's such a pure energy, it's totally uninfluenced. It has also a very special form, special power. I see that it makes everything I do much more effective, much more successful, you can say. Awareness that it's not me, it's not my energy, it's not I'm doing this, but I'm just kind of someone who how should I say, do you have a good word for it in English?
Like an instrument, do you mean? Or a conduit or a...
Yes, like that. An instrument, a conduit who hands over energy, or hands over, it's like it's done through us, but it's not I hanging myself, identifying with it. And that really is a huge protection for me. And I think makes actions also more pure, you can say, and pure in its intention, so that I'm not again taking away energy, that I nurture again my self-respect or my performance with it, but I let free my actions, and so they can have the greatest amount of power and influence, and I nurture myself from that other source as well. I hope that was not too abstract and too spiritual in that context. I hope it was understood.
No, I think it was very beautiful and very practical at the same time. And you really spoke about, how you said it earlier. It's a daily practice, and it's not rocket science. It is quite simple. It's just a practice. But as you were saying, when you have that regular practice, then you're more easily able to draw on that consciousness or on that energy and bring it into the actions you're performing, the interactions with people, into all the initiatives and all the work that goes on to helping the climate, helping sustainability, helping the world. But as you said, there's this extra kind of color, or this extra sort of elevated kind of vibe to how the actions are performed, which really puts it on a different level to, I guess, ordinary actions or ordinary awareness. So I thought it was wonderful, very practical. Maybe just on that, so what would you like to see? So with the work that you are doing in the BK Environment Initiative, where would you like to see that work go in the future?
That's a nice question. Well, there's so much more we could do. And I'm interested in offering spaces where people can talk about these issues in a different way. You can say, as the whole human being they are, they don't need to leave out their heart or their personal life. They can be the whole human being they are. And in this way, talk also on emotions, on fears, and to find friends where they can feel supported by, and see how they can see things different, they can learn to care for themselves as well, and whilst they do this important work. And I think really building a community of people who are examples for inner and personal change, as well as environmental work and activism. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of, we do have created lots of friends over the years, and people who work together, we work together with, and at the same time, this circles of practice where we meditate together, where we do inner work together, include that, integrate that in our environment work, in political work, in scientific work. That's something I would like to see more.
Yeah, that would be very cool. So, okay, I think we are sort of coming near to the end. So, Carolyn, it's been really nice talking with you about this fascinating aspect of environmental work. We've actually been asking all of our eco yogis to give us a challenge for the following week. So, could you give us a challenge? What's something that we could work on over the coming week? Maybe something in relation to mindsets or something you've been talking about today.
Yes, I love this question, and I would actually love to hear from those people who practice this challenge for this 1 year. I don't know, 1 week, sorry. I don't know if there's a chance to get a feedback loop on that. If you maybe write in the YouTube chat box or whatever, or write to the email address from your group.
Or on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook. I would really love to hear your experiences with that practice if you've done it. So I would like to invite you to practice every day to first connect with your inner self and feel your capacity of peace, your freedom, your love, and your connectedness with what you really are, as well as life and all forms of life. And then from that inner feeling or inner experience of fullness and positivity, take that energy into your actions, like let it flow into your actions, and also into relations, into encounters with other people, and see how it is different to when you expect something, where you go to a place where you expect things to be in a certain way, or where you go to a person and expect from him or her something specific, and to turn that expectation around into sharing. Or if you feel you need something, then to check, can I get whatever it is, can I get it from inside or from a moment of meditation, and then turn that around and become a giver. And I would be interested to hear if this giving makes you happy, or if you feel more empowered, or if it's a burden or difficult. I would like to see, to read about your experiences, to turn that, it's a direction, instead of wanting to give, like connect inside and share. And maybe your perspective, your perception, your perspective changes as well.
Kind of like giving from overflow, isn't it? Filling yourself up and then giving.
Yes.
Well, that's great. I think that's a very good challenge, and I'm sure many of our viewers will be up for it. And I also really look forward to hearing how it goes for everyone and what everyone's experience is. And of course, we've talked about meditation today, and meditation being such a core part of all of this, whether it's just on a personal level or as you were talking about, Carolyn, really looking at how to integrate that more into initiatives, policies, advocacy, activities, all these sorts of things. So if any of our viewers is interested in learning more about meditation, you'll probably find that the Brahma Kumaris organization. We are in all parts of the world, very likely in the country that you live in at the moment. So please just look us up, and I'm sure you'll find there's a meditation center hopefully near you, and please feel very welcome to come and meet us and to learn a bit more about meditation and spirituality and how to, as we said right at the start, how to apply it practically in life and use it to transform our perceptions and ultimately our actions and our relationships. So thank you again, Carolin. Really appreciate your time. And maybe to close us out, would you be able to maybe lead us through a meditation commentary for a few minutes?
Yes, gladly. How many minutes do you think?
Just a few, maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Great, yeah. Thank you very much for the beautiful questions, Leslie, and the really nice conversation. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Carolin.
So just sit comfortable and straight so that you can breathe nicely. And maybe you'd like to practice and try out meditating with open eyes. You can just place your view on something in front of you which doesn't distract you so much, so that gently you can turn your attention inside. I become aware of this moment. I relax my physical body and my mind. I gently turn inside myself and become aware of the being I am. I become aware of my thoughts and my feelings. I concentrate and connect with my inner peace. I open myself to see myself in a new way. I'm a beautiful, special being. I get closer to what feels really authentic inside myself. My mind becomes more and more silent. And I allow the energy of peace to fill my inner space more and more. It can expand, and raises of peace vibrations of peace spread out into the atmosphere. I enjoy being with myself in this sweet way. I can feel my inner freedom. And I connect with the Supreme Source, the higher source of energy, pure divine light. I receive this energy and fill myself like a waterfall of light flowing through me, flowing into my actions, to everything I do. Reaching out to our beautiful planet, to all forms of life. To my human family. Om Shanti.